The Imperium of man should have collapsed centuries ago. 10 billion Administratum adepts work in the Imperial Palace alone. For every soldier fighting, 10 men shuffle papers. It takes years for information to reach Terra, decades to process it, and decades more for a response to return. Reinforcements arrive to wars that ended generations ago. Tithes are demanded from planets that no longer exist. Whole departments have been lost in loops of paper trails, continuing to diligently perform roles that became obsolete millennia ago. The master of the Administratum is the most powerful of the High Lords, specifically because he can threaten to bog anyone down in red tape. They'll never escape in their lifetime. This is the government controlling 1 million worlds, and somehow, impossibly, it still functions. The question isn't how the Imperium survives its enemies. It's how the Imperium survives itself. The official answer is faith. Quadrillions believe, the Emperor protects. The ecclesiarchy maintains religious fervor across every world. Imperial citizens pray to a corpse on a throne and die willingly in his name. That's the propaganda. The truth is more disturbing and more elegant. The Imperium survives because its incompetence is a feature, not a bug. The Byzantine bureaucracy that bogs down every decision also makes the system impossible to kill. You cannot decapitate a government with 10 billion administrators in one building alone. You cannot corrupt an organization so vast that whole departments don't know other departments exist. You cannot infiltrate a bureaucracy where the people working in it don't understand what they're doing or why. The Administratum is described as bloated, sclerotic, inefficient, and utterly indispensable. Without it, the Imperium would grind to a halt. But the reason it's indispensable is precisely because it's bloated. The inefficiency is what keeps everything running. Consider the scale. The Administratum operates on hundreds of thousands of worlds. Billions of officials constantly carry out population censuses, calculate tithes, record information. Untold amounts of vellum consumed recording data that nobody will ever use. Vellum is Terra's 7th largest import by sheer weight. They produce parchment from livestock, bred specifically for that purpose, and from biovats growing skin. They fight interagency wars over parchment supplies. The Administratum knows written records are inefficient compared to digital storage. They do it anyway, not out of tradition or religious dogma. Because physical records can't be corrupted remotely, can't be deleted by hackers, can't be altered without leaving physical evidence. 10,000 years of paper trails stacked in archives kilometers deep means the Imperium has redundancy that digital systems can't match. Lose a server and you lose everything on it. Burn a library and you just lost one of 10,000 identical copies scattered across the galaxy. The redundancy is intentional. 2 completely separate departments do the same job, unaware of each other's existence. These Byzantine systems were put in place as fail-safe measures during the Great Crusade. Then they spiraled into administrative excess as the bureaucracy expanded to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. But here's what that actually means. If chaos corrupts one department, the redundant department keeps functioning. If Xenos destroy an entire sector's administrative infrastructure, 50 other sectors have backup copies of the same information. If an Inquisitor purges an entire Administratum facility for heresy, the system barely notices because 17 other facilities were processing the same data simultaneously. The inefficiency creates resilience. A streamlined, efficient government would be vastly more vulnerable to targeted attacks than this sprawling mess of overlapping jurisdictions and duplicate records. What do you think would happen if someone actually tried to reform the Administratum and make it efficient? Would the Imperium strengthen, or would removing the redundancy make it more fragile? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The lack of understanding is equally important. Most Administratum adepts have no concept of how their work fits into any overall scheme. They perform tasks without knowing why. Understanding is neither required nor welcome. Work is an end in itself. Scribes record petty details nobody will ever use. Clerks process paperwork for departments that no longer exist. Officials assess tithes using formulas nobody remembers the origin of. This seems insane until you realize it's perfect defense against corruption and infiltration. You cannot manipulate someone who doesn't understand what they're doing. You cannot bribe a clerk to falsify records if the clerk doesn't know what the records mean. You cannot subvert a system where even the people inside it don't know how it works. The ignorance is armor. The Departamento Munitorum demonstrates this perfectly. Responsible for Imperial Guard logistics, organizing tithes, troop movements, deployment. Distress calls from invaded worlds get processed through the chain. Star system to subsector to sector to segmentum to Imperium headquarters. Each level decides whether they have resources to respond or passes it higher. By the time Terra processes the request and sends reinforcements, the war has often ended. The defenders either won without help or died waiting for it. This looks catastrophic. It's actually brilliant. If the Imperium responded instantly to every distress call, they'd be constantly repositioning forces, creating vulnerabilities, soys, exhausting resources. The slowness forces local forces to handle problems themselves or die trying. Only truly existential threats warrant Imperial-level response. The bureaucratic delay is natural selection for conflicts that actually matter versus local skirmishes that should be handled locally. The lost departments reveal how deep the system's resilience goes. Whole sections of the Administratum have been submerged in bureaucracy, becoming lost in loops of paper trails. These departments continue operating, staffed by adepts performing roles that became obsolete millennia ago. Nobody shut them down because nobody knows they exist. From the Imperium's perspective, this is waste. From a system's resilience perspective, this is genius. Those lost departments are still processing data, still maintaining records, still functioning according to protocols from when they were relevant. When something from that era becomes relevant again, the Imperium discovers they have an entire department that's been maintaining expertise for thousands of years. The institutional memory is preserved not through planning, but through bureaucratic inertia, too massive to kill anything completely. The master of the Administratum is the most powerful High Lord, not because of the armies he commands or the authority he wields. It's because he controls the material resources of the Imperium and can threaten to bog anyone in red tape they'll never escape. That threat matters more than military force, because everyone in the Imperium depends on the Administratum. Space Marine chapters need supplies. The Inquisition needs transport. Planetary governors need their tithes processed. The ecclesiarchy needs its records maintained. Every institution relies on bureaucratic cooperation from an organization notorious for being obstructive, petty, and hidebound. The master doesn't need to fight his enemies. He just refuses to process their requisitions until they die of old age waiting for approval. The hatred directed at the Administratum is universal. The Adeptus Arbiters think they're inefficient. The Inquisition established an entire ordo dedicated to cutting red tape. Soldiers despise them. Citizens fear them. Even other branches of the Adeptus Terra find them insufferable. But the Administratum is also indispensable. It's the memory and nerve system of the Imperium. In all its bloated monstrosity, in all its sclerotic inertia, in all its shrieking inefficiency, the Administratum is the grease and oil keeping the machine of imperial government functioning. Without it, everything stops. The hatred is irrelevant. You can despise bureaucrats all you want. You still need them to process your supply requests. The ironic defense against corruption is organizational complexity. The Administratum is vulnerable to individual corruption, deception, infiltration, greedy officials, ambitious departmental heads, petty tyrants. but the organization's vast complexity and inertia protect it from systemic corruption. You cannot corrupt the whole system because nobody understands the whole system. You can bribe a clerk, but that clerk only controls a tiny piece of data processing that 17 other clerks also handle. You can infiltrate a department, but 50 other departments are doing the same work. The corruption remains localized because the system is too Byzantine to corrupt globally. Chaos can turn an entire office. It cannot turn the Administratum. The organization is too large, too complex, too dysfunctional to be controlled. The Emperor created this. Malcador the Sigillite designed the original imperial administration during the Great Crusade. He saw what a galactic empire would require and built a system that could scale beyond anything humanity had attempted. The efficiency was probably better initially. Then 10,000 years happened. The heresy killed half the Imperium's leadership. The scouring purged the traitors. The age of apostasy saw Gog Vandar corrupt the system. The Macarian heresy required a century to stabilize. Every crisis added more failsafes, more redundancy, more bureaucratic layers designed to prevent the last disaster from repeating. The inefficiency is scar tissue from 10 millennia of trauma, and it's stronger than any efficient system would be, because efficient systems are fragile. Robust systems are messy. The Imperium stands because it's too stupid to fall, it's too big to coordinate attacks against, too inefficient to be worth infiltrating, too redundant to be crippled by targeted strikes, too ignorant to be manipulated through information warfare, too baroque to be understood by anyone trying to subvert it. The Tyranids can consume entire sectors, and the Administratum barely notices, because 50 other sectors were doing the same work. Chaos can corrupt whole departments, and the system continues because nobody knows which departments are actually necessary. The Necrons can destroy priceless records, and the Imperium has 17 backup copies scattered across the galaxy. The enemies of mankind keep trying to kill the Imperium through conventional warfare. The Imperium survives because it's fundamentally unconventional. It shouldn't work. It barely works. But it keeps working, because barely working is enough when you're too massive to die completely. Guilliman returned from 10,000 years in stasis, saw what the Imperium had become, and realized it's unsalvageable. The rot is too deep, the bureaucracy is too entrenched. The ignorance is too systematic. He's trying to reform it anyway, through the Indomitus Crusade, and the Primaris Marines, and the Logos Imperialis. But even a Primarch with the authority of the Lord Commander can't fix the Administratum. The system is too large. Too many people have careers invested in maintaining inefficiency. Too many departments would need to be eliminated. Too much institutional knowledge would be lost. The Imperium might actually be stronger broken than it would be fixed. Guilliman is discovering what the Emperor probably understood from the beginning. You don't build efficient empires across 1 million worlds. You build redundant ones that can survive losing half their infrastructure and keep functioning. The Administratum is humanity's greatest defense, not despite its incompetence, but because of it.